I'm calling on Kamala Harris to officially disavow the support of all Hamas sympathizers, anti-Semites, Israel haters on college campuses and everywhere else.
Thursday, former President Trump called for Vice President Harris to disavow anti-Semitism as a new wave of campus protests start this year. Here to tell us more, we have George Washington University student Sabrina Soffer. Thank you so much for being here, Sabrina. Very good to see you. We've talked before. So next week is the United Nations General Debate, and ahead of that, we saw family members of Israeli and Israeli-American hostages gather outside the UN with supporters to call on member states to prioritize the release of hostages. Do you feel that they're being heard?
Thank you, Alicia, for having me. And yes, I really would urge the UN as they begin this new term to really prioritize the hostage issue. And I do feel that in the Jewish community, they are being heard, but in the international community, they are not. I actually think that they're being ignored and this issue is being minimized. I really do believe that the UN should make this a priority because hostages are being starved. I don't know how many are alive, and the lack of condemnation of Hamas for what they are doing to these hostages and to their own civilians and Israeli civilians and destabilizing the entire region is absolutely absurd. And the fact that they're not prioritizing this issue is absolutely ridiculous, and something needs to change. So this should be a moment of reckoning for the United Nations and all global leaders.
Yeah, we continue to think about those families and the hostages. And as you know, we're coming up on the day that will mark 1 year since the October 7th attacks. And we also know that here in the United States, things are very fraught for Jewish Americans. There was a man from Canada earlier this summer who was arrested trying to come into the United States with plans for a shooting at a Jewish center in Brooklyn. We've seen these campus protests re-up again after the summer ended, and some of these campuses are trying to keep them outside their actual campus, but nonetheless, these are happening. How do you take this all in as we're approaching October 7th?
Sure. So just, tagging from the previous topic, Antonio Gutierrez said that there needs to be de-escalation in the region. University leadership is saying the same thing. They want to de-escalate campus tensions. They want to bring peace to campus, but that's not going to happen if you stop the source of the tension. And the source of that tension is these campus protesters. So if these groups are not suspended, if they're not expelled, if the falsification and fabrication of anti-Israel curriculum is not stopped, and these groups and professors are held accountable, and the university leadership is not held accountable for covering it all up, it's only going to continue. So I really urge university leadership to look at what happened last year. They don't want to bear those same events again, like the encampment. They need to take action this year, and that means de-escalating by doing something about the source of the problem.
The Anti-Defamation League came up with a list of recommendations on how to handle these sort of disruptions. We're going to put some of those up so that people can see. The universities should review and strengthen policies, reiterate policies and the consequences, develop a security protocol, provide resources ahead of major events, and enforce codes of conduct. I don't know about you, but I feel like some of these types of rules, nothing against the Anti-Defamation League at all, but some of these rules were kind of in place with these universities, and they didn't seem to be able to handle the situation anyway.
Sure. So, yeah, the reason that these universities are not able to handle the situation is because they're not establishing deterrence measures. So, again, at GW, for example, they have established new policies, and they have enforced them by suspending the SJP and the JVP. These are the groups that are responsible for the campus tensions and the protests. However, these groups are so organized, and they are reorganizing themselves, reconstituting themselves as outside groups, and they're continuing to perpetuate the same thing. So if these students are not expelled, if the professors are not held accountable, nothing will change. And there needs to be some sort of an incentive for these university administrators to act. And one of those things involves removing federal funding for universities that continue to cover up for anti-Semitism or fail to hold people accountable for it. Another thing is revoking tax-exempt status. I mean, something needs to come from higher up to ensure that university leadership is taking action. Things below that level, unfortunately, I would love for them to work. enforcing security measures and stuff, that's great and all. But if nothing is done from the higher up that creates an incentive for administrators to truly take action, nothing will change.
Yeah, you make excellent points. Sabrina Soffer, really good to see you again and look forward to speaking to you in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you so much.